Hey, Steve, before we get started,
Yes.
I would like to know how you would like me to be used as a resource for this meeting. Technically,
Okay.
I shouldn't speak until lobby visitation, but there may be some issues where it might be prudent to bring me in.
Okay.
So
Let's play it by ear and see where we're going with this, and we'll see if it's pertinent during the meeting, or if we wait till lobby visitation, we'll see.
okay,
All right.
I'll remain on mute unless you call on me
Okay.
until lobby.
Or
that.
you know, or waving or whatever. There is a wave function on here, but I never.
I have the power to mute. I have the power to mute any of you at any time, just so you know.
You look very nice today.
Ah. Okay, the YouTube has started, Steve, so we're good to go.
Okay, good. There's Amanda, good. Tyson's with us. There's Sam. Yay, we got everybody, I think. Oh, no, Bob.
Bob. No, Bob's here.
Oh,
Bob's here.
All
He's
right.
just, we have no video.
No video. Bob, turn your video on.
I either have video and can't control anything, or you don't see me and I can control stuff. You pick.
You're Bob, you're on mute.
Okay, got me now?
Now we can hear you.
All right, good. For better or
But
for worse.
Kristen just warned us that she can mute any of us if she doesn't like what we're saying, so.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a full house tonight. This is the first time in a while. This is great. And let's see, Kristen said we have the YouTube channel running so people can watch. And so I would like to officially bring the meeting to order. And our first item of business is the approval of what amounts to the draft meeting notes that I was just complaining to Andy that I'm glad he's here tonight because he's taking notes. They've got to be better than what I came up with last time. They're at least they're short. They're only one page. So would you? I sent these to you the other day. Let's see, Kristen, can we? No, I don't want to do that just yet. I won't share the screen. I did send them out to everyone. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections on the? That's the September 15th Bicycle Safety Commission when we were at the Kiwanis Memorial Shelter. How the month makes a difference in terms of the weather and the amount of daylight we have.
Okay, here, I think.
Anybody? And I'll cycle through pictures. Anybody have, so do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Bob's moved. And a second? And a second. Andy, you need to mute yourself if you're going to.
I second that one.
There you go. All right. Just check and see if your mute is on. So all in favor of approving the minutes or the meeting notes as distributed, say aye, or some other
Aye.
form of acknowledgement. Any nays? Anyone object to them or want to abstain, so we approve them as written. Okay, the first order of business is just a quick report on my part. We got a helmet grant. It actually is called Keep the Lid On from the Ohio Academy of American Academy of Pediatrics. I got to, in the middle of the pandemic, I got to drive all the way down to Columbus and all fully masked, and they wouldn't even let me out of the car. They I unlocked it, and they opened the back and threw the helmets in boxes. And anyway, the solution, thanks to Kristen and Amanda for trying to distribute these, was that we put them at the community center, and people. And there was a notice given in the weekly e-news, I believe. There may have been other places, and people could stop in and get them. So I looked at I stopped at the community center the other day, and 19 helmets out of the 48 had been distributed. So less than half. We still have 29 to distribute. I still can't remember whether the red ones or the blue ones are the big ones, but we had a lot more blue ones left yet. So we need to have some ideas. I mean, we could probably re-advertise that they're at the community center, or we simply, since the weather's turning cold, we can bring them in and maybe store them at Simpson over the winter. Anybody have a suggestion on what we could do? Seems like since it's getting cold, probably it's not a big time for people wanting helmets at this point. These are all children's helmets. We have the rest of the helmets that we purchased at, I think Kristen's got them someplace at the Simpson building.
So maybe we do like a spring educational push, like we see every year when everybody's kind of,
we could do it in April.
Emerges from hibernation and they forget how to do things correctly. And so we do an educational push and hand out helmets at the same time.
Okay. That's, I think that works for me. I told the folks at the community center, we'd decide what we're going to do, and we'd presumably get them out of their hair so I can stop out with my, the larger vehicle and bring them over to Simpson. So on one of my infrequent trips around town, I won't try to put them on my bike, but I might get one of those boxes, but probably not both of them.
Steve, unless you really want an excuse, we can certainly just have somebody bring them over here for you.
It's up to you. I'm glad that
excuse to get out of the house. I don't.
Yeah, that might be something that I need to do anyway. So I go out there for on Thursdays. I'm out north for physical therapy from my knee replacement, so I can I should be able to swing over there on the way home, and then I'll drop them over at Simpson. Is there somebody is there? Is your office staffed or?
Not always. So just give me a heads up.
Okay, I'll let you know. And then rather than leaving them laying out in the hallway for people to pilfer or whatever. All right. So there is a survey that I have intended to complete. I just got to go find it in my email. They wanted to know how many we've given away and what some of the problems were. We'll just in big letters say pandemic, we couldn't distribute. Because if we had taken these to the farmer's market or had any of the normal things we do during the summer, I'm sure we would have been able to distribute most of them fairly quickly. All right, the second item, B, is the largest kind of, at least from my perspective, the largest portion of our discussion tonight. What I did in your agenda, I gave you a link to the BG and Independent Media. They had a fairly good report that they wrote up about the Transportation and Safety Committee's meeting that was called last week at this, I guess, an hour earlier than this time. And the issue, I think I sent you an email on it, that the issue is that we have two newly paved streets, or soon to be newly paved streets. Clay has been paved, and that's just the little 2-block east-west street, a block or so from the city building. And then Maple Street from West Worcester down to Pearl has been completely dug up and redone. And both of the streets, as it turns out, have in those sections have on-street parking. And what was discovered is that in the uniform code for traffic devices, that with a 22-foot wide street, that means you've got 2 lanes that are 11 feet apiece. But cars, when you have cars parked, they take up about 8 feet of that. It means that sharrows would actually have to be placed in the very middle of the road, which of course wouldn't work, because we don't want bikes following the sharrows down the middle of the street. So the city administration was asking the Transportation and Safety Committee to weigh in on it, and there was a discussion. It was noted by Joe Fawcett that in the rankings that we had done 2 years ago on the priority streets, that Clay Street had ranked relatively low, and but Maple obviously had ranked high, since it connects City Park from the Slippery Elm Trail. And so the discussion was about whether to take, they offered basically 2 alternatives. One is to, if we were going to have sharrows on the street, the parking had to go. According to the city map, there is off-street parking for all of those the places. Whether residents feel that it's adequate or not is a different story. The other alternative is, if you leave the parking there, you essentially can't have sharrows. Neocles Leontis proposed, well, what if you did sharrows just on one side of the street? Brian Kraft opined that he'd never seen that situation. There was some question about whether that would be really confusing or not. Anyway, we were tasked, the Bike Safety Commission, by the president of council, Mark Hollenbach, asked us to discuss that particular situation, but more broadly, the whole idea of on-street parking versus sharrows, because there will be other places in town where we have a 22-foot street where there is also on-street parking, and that would effectively prohibit us if we left on-street parking. So the one thing I was impressed by, was the mayor stepped up and he said he didn't want to really interfere in the transportation committee, transportation and safety committee's deliberations, but he spoke very strongly in favor of the active transportation plan, so-called complete streets. And I mean, the one question he asked is, so stop and think what streets are for. Are streets for parking, or are they for, transportation? And he said, part of our reaction, the Transportation Safety Committee and myself as well, is after watching the discussion from several years ago on Conneaut, where that one block of Conneaut had parking and the residents were really up in arms. Mike also spoke, I thought, fairly nicely. He said, so, we got a conflict here. Do we allow the potential for conflict with residents to deter us from having complete streets and an active transportation plan? And he said he has had criticism because we haven't been following the plan to do active transportation plan and complete streets. So these two things are a bit in opposition to one another. There may be some solutions, but Mark Hollenbaugh specifically asked us to discuss this at our meeting tonight. So I'd like to open it up for some discussion and see what people are thinking about relative to the two specific situations, Clay and that one section of South Maple, but also other places where, at least I think some of us have been thinking about about maybe Sharrows or other bike routes. I guess one of the questions that was raised by the TSC is, how important are the bike infrastructure, the Sharrows? Can't we just have routes like we do now without, and maybe a sign that says bikes may use full lane, and without having markings on the street or not? And so I think what I'd like to do is see what people's opinions are, and whether we have some things that we can offer to both the Transportation Safety Committee, but also to all of City Council. Anybody want to be the first one jump in?
I'll jump in on the Clay Street. I think I agree with the committee member. I'm sorry, Hollenbaugh.
He's the chair. He's the president of council.
Okay.
He was actually part of the discussion that night.
I will agree with him that Clay Street is probably low on my list, but I think Maple would be an amazing route, at least to the Slippery Elm. Like, I think that we should, if we were to focus on one more than another, then Maple would be my choice, I guess, is my initial thought on it.
Well, but the problem is you're not going to be able to put Sharrows on it, and you can't put a bike lane on it, so you're stuck. All you got is signage. Now, places like Pearl, there's no parking, so that's perfect for Sharrows. I think the busier the street, the more likely you are to be able to put Sharrows on it, or even a bike lane. But if you have any kind of parking, you're not going to be able to do it. That's all there is to it. It's just the way it is.
Well, and so the question is that about removing parking. And so there was some discussion about being averse to taking people's parking away. The interesting thing that I would jump in on Maple, that because that street's under construction, has been all summer, they don't have any street parking. So it strikes me that if we're going to remove parking, this is the time to do it. We're not going to give it back to them and then take it away. And that's the other part of Maple that's confusing. North Maple, from Conneaut across Wallace down to West Worcester, does have on-street parking. Then the next section from West Worcester to Pearl has had on-street parking, but then as Eileen just pointed out, south of Pearl, it doesn't have any parking. And so it's a mixed bag. And one of the things that I learned from Ye's Bikes is you know, sure, we could put south of Pearl, we could put Sharrows on very easily, but then they're sort of Sharrows to nowhere, because once you cross Pearl going north, now you can't have the Sharrows, at least on the northbound side. Let's see, Bob, you were gonna jump in, then I'll entertain Tyson's idea.
Do all the people on Maple, if we remove parking, they have access for parking behind their house then?
Alongside. That does not necessarily mean that they think it's adequate. You know, if they've got an RV in the driveway and they park on the street, whatever. I mean, there's different reasons why people choose to go on the street. Also, it's an issue if there are rental properties where there are multiple apartments and then there's only the one driveway. Although according to the city code, as I understand it, I think in order to have an apartment or a rental, you have to have 1.5 parking spots per apartment. I don't know if that applies to, former single family dwellings or not, but I know there are at least some places where that's part of the zoning. But yeah, it's according, and again, I'm taking the word from Joe Fawcett and looking at the map. There are driveways for every house along that section of South Maple. I have not gone down there myself because I think it's still under construction, although I haven't been there in a couple of weeks. Tyson, any thoughts?
Yeah, so my opinion, it actually might not be very popular among the rest of the commission, but I watch traffic for 10 hours a night. And my personal opinion is if it's a big issue, whether to put Sharrows in or remove parking, I don't think that if strictly safety wise for bicyclists, I don't think that there's a big difference between Sharrows and signage, because people driving cars do not pay attention, period. So whether it's a marking on the pavement or signage, I don't think that there's that big of a difference when it comes to actual safety of a bicyclist. Now, the difference could be, does it make the bicyclist feel safer? And that could be. But if you're looking at actual safety of someone driving a car, I don't think that it's worth removing on-street parking to put Sharrows in. I think my personal opinion is signage would be fine.
So, Officer, could I ask a question of the officer?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Nick, please.
So what would actually make them safer?
What would make bicyclists safer? Education. The safest way for bicyclists.
What about bike lanes that the cars are not allowed in?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. If there was an option for bike lanes, then that would be safer. But I don't think that's an option for what we're talking about here.
Certainly not on a 22-foot street, because the bike, you have to have 2 5-foot bike lanes. Now you've got a street that's only 11 feet wide for cars.
So you can make it a one-way street.
Taking away on-street parking and making one-way streets are probably equally
I think we're just
unpopular.
racking up points for the people who live on the 100 block of South Maple to not like us anymore at this point. I have to agree with Tyson that I think, yeah, signage is probably better, because I feel like we might, to convince a lot of people that the parking that they've had for decades even is not going to be there anymore. That might be a tough sell.
The other thing was that the bike people, when they came and showed us that on a street as wide as Maple, if you make it a one-way, then people will go faster because they'll
Right.
have more room. So it's actually going to make it less safe for bicyclists if you make it a one-way street. Unless you cordon off a bike lane with a curving that cars cross. If you make it so that they can't get to the bike lane, that makes it extra safe. But otherwise, if you make it a wider street that's one way, then the bicyclists aren't safe at all, because then the people just go 35 miles an hour.
Well, and I think bicycle lanes are a completely another conversation anyway. That be, Steve, especially if we bring in Yay Bikes, because depending on how you design that, there's a lot of concerns with that, because if you have bike lanes and then they end and someone's only comfortable on a bike lane, then you're not anywhere. And also, depending on the traffic on the street, if the bike lane is not designed properly and you don't actually have a barrier, then that's actually more dangerous, right? I mean, there's been articles that you've been sending up, Steve, about that, than actually having the bike in front of you to see what they're actually doing. So, I mean, yeah, if we had all the space in the world, put lanes in and put the barriers down. I've seen them with the nice concrete barriers with, plants and flowers and things. That's great. But I'm not sure there's any street in Bowling Green that we have enough space to do that with. So that's yet another conversation. And I think the streets we're talking about, we do not have space for lanes. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there since we veered off into the bike lane. I just amused myself.
Since I let Neocles jump in on this, Bill, did you want to pop in as well?
I'd like to pop in.
Well, we give you at least both of the council members equal time here.
Well, there's no need to give equal time. You can give me more. A few points. One is, first of all, thank you, Steve, for coming to the Transportation and Safety Committee meeting the other night. Your presence was very valuable and much appreciated. And I do feel compelled to point out a correction to the BG Independent Media's account. Of course, we all know the BG Independent Media is exceptional in their coverage and go way above and beyond. But there was one part of there I didn't catch the first time I read through it. And the motion that was before the Transportation and Safety Committee that I chair, and Neocles is a member as well as Mark Hollenbach, was specifically and only for Clay Street. The way that I was trying to guide the meeting, and which we should have allocated much more time to, was to treat the question in 4 parts. The first part was Clay, which I thought was the easy one. And then Maple was in 3 sections. The first section was Sand Ridge to Pearl. The second section was Pearl to Worcester, and the third section was Worcester to Conneaut. And the reason that I split those up is because Maple Street, as this commission has been consistently saying, is much more important than Clay because of Slippery Elm. So what I thought was the whole concept of trying to implement complete streets is to take each project, each situation, and gear the solution to that situation. Some streets are wide enough, some streets aren't wide enough. Some streets perhaps at some point could be made one way. And so in some streets, it's just a partial reconstruction. Some streets, it's much more extensive, like for example, Fairview. So the way that I approach it, I think it's consistent with the vibe that I've been getting by faithfully attending your meetings, is we take each situation for what we have and try and work within them. That's why I separated Clay out. And in terms of that's the mayor's interjection. He did ask a question that is worthy of discussion, and that is, what are streets for? Now, he had it as almost implied an exclusive or, which would be for transportation or for parking. It's an and or. There is a possibility that streets are for both. Now, if we were going to design a street, or actually design a city from scratch, we would have done things much differently. We would have incredibly wide streets. We would have bike lanes. We'd have curbs everywhere, sidewalks probably everywhere. No combined sewers, and life would be wonderful. But that's not the hand we've been dealt. So we're just trying to be pragmatic. What I would like to see out of the Bicycle Commission or Bicycle Safety Commission is to take those 4 parts. We're not necessarily establishing a precedent, because the whole idea is each project is sufficiently different. So what would be the desire on Clay? My personal thinking, as I expressed last week, was Clay is not the hill to die on, and we're not making a decision whether or not to have bicycles on Clay. We're merely making a decision whether the share roads, whether the decals would be on the street, and what must be done for that to happen. And so that's Clay. Maple, that's a whole different animal. For example, the part north of Main Street, between Main and Conneaut, there's been discussion in the last several Bicycle Safety Commission meetings, a good discussion, raising a good point, that Wallace is a really good residential street to bicycle down. It's not too busy. It's a pleasant part of the city, but there's parking. I mean, there's a lot of parking on Wallace, but that didn't dissuade the commission from saying this would be a good route, good east-west route, not necessarily for share roads, but for people to bike. And so I view the part of Maple between Main Street and Conneaut as being very similar to that, a place where we can direct bicyclists, but it's not a place that can have share roads. And as inhibiting as removing parking from Clay is, I think it would be more inhibiting to remove parking from Maple between Main and Conneaut. Now, the second stretch, I think, deserves study. And there may be some pragmatic way to come up with an imaginative solution on Maple between Pearl and Worcester. There may be some way to handle that. I haven't looked at the schematics. And then, of course, from Sandridge to Pearl, I'd say put the share roads in, even if nothing's done north of Pearl. That's a long enough stretch that, if we can't put share roads there, then what are we doing? So that's my 2 cents worth. Well, maybe by this point, 5 cents worth. And I appreciate the chance to talk.
Anybody else? Kirby, any things you'd like to weigh in on? You're muted. Oh, there you go. Good. You actually remembered. Most of us don't.
Yeah. I live on North Maple and I bike on South Maple a fair amount. And yeah, I'd say people really like to use their parking on South Maple.
But not North Maple, and not North Maple, not North Maple.
Sorry.
Being an editorial.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we really, yeah, I agree with Tyson that signage is more important than, okay, sorry. I'm getting yelled at by multiple family members on different issues
They
right
have
now.
to tell them they have to put themselves on mute, Kirby.
Tell your sister alumni from the commission don't count.
She doesn't get to vote anymore.
That's right. You're too old. You got booted.
How about not to put our youngest member on the spot, but Sam, do you have any thoughts about
I do not.
no.
I live in kind of a private neighborhood, so I don't really see much things going
is
on
there
outside.
is there on-street parking in your neighborhood? No.
Actually,
Okay.
there is, but nobody ever uses it.
Okay. Because yours is a newer neighborhood. And you got lots of parking in the driveways and
It's not newer. It's just like it's tucked back.
okay. Yeah, and the areas like you live in are not ones we're thinking about having bicycle lanes on anyway. We're
Yeah.
looking at the places
It
where
grows.
there are connections, where people want to go from one place to the next.
Yeah.
Anybody else that Eileen or Bob, do you have further? Thanks, Sam.
Well,
Didn't want
I
to
would
put you on
say-
the spot, but
No, I would just say that for biking for over 40 some years, I'm used to cars on the street, so I could live without sheriffs on the street. I think you're going to disgruntle a lot of people if we take away the parking there. I agree with Tyson signage, and I try to watch out for cars. I move clear to, so no one opens the door on me right there. But I think it would be nice if it was lanes or you had sheriffs there, but the people are going to be upset if they lose their parking. I know that. So.
okay. Well, so I want to follow up a little bit on what Mike Asperger said at the about the importance of complete streets. I know when the committee members asked me to speak, I mostly spoke in the same way that I did not want bicyclists being put, knocking heads with residents simply because of over parking and stuff. But I was, at the time, I wasn't thinking about the philosophy of complete streets. And that was the point that I thought was well made by the mayor, that he said, yeah, you're going to maybe get some residents upset. On the other hand, those residents who want complete streets, and remember, or also called active transportation plan, we're talking about handicapped individuals, we're talking about pedestrians as well as bicyclists that are able to use a particular area. I think in the case of South Maple, and Clay, there's sidewalks on both sides of those streets. So for pedestrians and I think people probably in wheelchairs, that's not a big issue. It struck me that, that section of South Maple, south of Worcester, this might be, as Bill was saying, this is an opportunity because they've had to live without parking for literally all summer. They've had to do something. It strikes me that there must be sufficient parking for people without the street because they haven't been able to park on it. And this is the time that we could at least have the section from Worcester down to Sand Ridge as a full thoroughfare with our Sharrows marking, which is part of the evidence for
If I could-
infrastructure.
I'm pretty sure that the people on South Maple are just like parking on other streets.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
They come over and park in your driveway. Okay. Well, no, I'm sure that they've found some other place to park. I guess my point is, why can't they continue to do that? rather than return parking to the street. This would be a time to, to put the applications down on that street. It seems to me the general sense of the committee is that, most of you have spoken kind of following Tyson's, professional observations about the importance of signage. We certainly need signs, and we need to somehow demarcate Maple Street as one of our primary thoroughfares. And the question is it as important as it was on Conneaut, for example, to have those Sharrows on there or not? We certainly could put the Sharrows south of Pearl. It strikes me as sort of you could do it. It isn't as, it doesn't make the whole route continuous. But I guess that's another possibility that wasn't really discussed. So Kirby, you said you live on North Maple. So what would happen if we removed on-street parking on North Maple? Are there places where people don't have driveways or sufficient?
I think most people would have sufficient parking. They'd just be upset about it.
I mean, that's exactly what happened on Conneaut, because what we didn't do due diligence when people were really up in arms at the city council meeting, and not a single one of them happened to mention that section of Conneaut does not have any houses behind it. So their lots run all the way through, and they have huge lots of parking on the backside, but they just prefer to park out on the street. And because that wasn't noted at the time, that decision was made. And the difference is on Conneaut, it's not 22 feet wide. So there's room for the 11 feet to put Sharrows on the parking side. And, Conneaut's a special case all the way from Grove to Haskins because it's a wider street. If we had more, as Neocles was talking about, or Bill, I guess it was, if we had more streets like Conneaut, it would be an easier decision, certainly for Sharrows. It would be, there could be more discussion about bike lanes as well on a street like Conneaut. But the decision, part of the decision on bike lanes is also a financial one. It's quite a bit more expensive because of the impact on utilities and the need to widen things. I'd like to, given the time, I would like to just make a note that one of the discussions that we had at the September meeting, and I don't want to go into this right now, but the use of multi-use paths around town. A number of years ago, we had a discussion that was essentially ended the same way that the first block of Conneaut did, with a lot of upset neighbors. They didn't want a bike, a multi-use path in their neighborhood because the opinion was it drew the wrong kinds of people. And I guess we should have felt affronted to that, because I think bicyclists are the right kinds of people. But we do have that, there is city-owned right-of-way that goes north. And as we talked about at our meeting in September, we do have, I think it's Coogan's Corners, that's north of Bishop. And it's essentially an island. It's part of the city, but there's no way to connect it to back to the rest of the city except on Brim, or I guess go out Bishop and go on Route 25, neither of which is certainly an ideal way to bike. There's also the right-of-way that's south of where I live here on Scott Hamilton that was recommended in the Community Action Plan as another place to be able to connect College with Mercer. It's in an it's by I guess a large drainage ditch. That area that's kind of gone by the wayside, but that's another potential multi-use area. What I'd like to do it right now, Kristen, if you can allow me to share my screen. Is that you've disabled my participant? Are you able to allow me to share, Kristen? Okay.
Steve, while Kristen's setting that up,
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, but at the September meeting at the City Park, there was a recommendation by the Bicycle Safety Commission, and it was approved. I haven't seen the minutes, so I don't know if it's in the minutes, to recommend the multi-use path from the central part of the city, if you will, to both the community center and Cogan's Crossing. Am I remembering that correctly? Because
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's already been voted on, and that's important to me because we have a Transportation and Safety Committee meeting on November 2nd, and that is one of the issues that I want to bring up in that meeting. So I want to be absolutely clear that
It's not reflected. That's one of the two things that in trying to take the meeting, run the meeting and take the notes at the same time, I've reflected it in there in the meeting notes, but not as I guess I reflected as potential areas for future improvements. But we did have two sets of recommendations, and that's the second one. You are correct in remembering that. So am I able to share? Yeah, I'm able to share.
Should be.
Okay. So here's what I wanted to do is you've received these in your in an email just before the meeting. We have 3 members who have generously volunteered to help with are you seeing the bike route suggestions and bike route
Yes.
locations? Are you?
Yep.
Okay. Mine's on another monitor, so I wasn't sure if everybody saw it. Andy and Bob and Kirby all submitted reports, and I'm not sure that I had shared these ahead of time with folks. So I wanted to, I did send them in an email for you to look at. Andy had 2 that just because he's an overachiever, I'm sure.
The second one was just too much free time, I guess, which I don't have now. I'd like to update this. The one that we're looking at right now is the one that I'd like to officially submit, I guess.
Okay.
Just
this is the one that has the routes on it, and Andy's other one, he whether he had too much time or was an overachiever, he included destinations in that, and I thought that was also useful. But these routes that are referenced here come from the existing bike route map that we have been distributing for a number of years, but has it's fallen off the commission webpage. But route is as Andy points out, is the downtown loop, and he's suggesting that that we change, for example, change the Northeast Street from Oak to Court Street as the link there. The other alternative would be to go a little farther north and actually use Clay, which means that it may make a difference in terms of what the Transportation and Safety Committee was dealing with. And then, so each of these, I'm not going to go through each of them.
It's basically just
Separate.
taking the previous routes and my notes on maybe changes that could be done to each route. Why, you know, some of them are left blank, like to the Woodland Mall. How else are you going to get there other than, you know,
Right.
Main Street or I guess North College? But anyways,
so
yes.
let me, I'm going to stop sharing. I should be able to figure this out more easily. So this is, let's see, this is Bob's suggestion. Bob, who's probably the most experienced writer among us, submitted this as part of the committee report. And Bob, why don't you narrate a little bit about what your thoughts were?
Well, I just took thought from just like from downtown to get to other places there. I think I come in second place to Andy. He's done a great job. I commend him on what he's got right here. But these are kind of routes that I bicycle sometimes to get out of town. If I was in downtown, where I would go to and how to get out of town on the best streets. They're not all the safest streets, but I thought they were the most obvious ones to get out of town on, or to get from downtown to other places right here. But again, those could be compromised with what Andy has right there. And I think probably a little more detail would be better if I would go into these, because again, there's on-street parking in some of these streets. But again, to get from one place in downtown to someplace else, you're going to have to go on some streets that probably for some people, a novice rider is not going to feel too safe with. But I'm kind of used to biking, and I'll go about any place, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be safely going to some other place. But hopefully people are just going to have to put up with what they have to get from one place in Bowling Green to someplace else. We're not going to have sharrows in every street. We're not going to have bike lanes. And some people, you're just going to have to do the best you can, look out for other traffic and go from there, I guess.
So actually, Bob, that reminds me, it sort of reflects what Tyson said earlier, that as an alternative, a strong alternative, and what the Bike Safety Commission has been doing for the last few years is the education of riders. You know, thanks to Amanda for the slow rolls until the pandemic put slow rolls to a complete stop here. We hope we can get them started again next summer. But the education, and that's over the last several decades, my understanding is nationally, that's one of the big arguments that's happened with the League of American Bicyclists and other organizations is, do you try to promote bicycle lanes to the exclusion of making sure that people know how to ride safely on places where there aren't lanes? And so the use of education is, I think, a critical one that Tyson, it sort of reinforces what we have been doing, trying to help people with the rules of the road and where to ride out on the passenger wheel place in the road so that traffic can see you better. Make sure that you're wearing a helmet, make sure you're wearing, clothing that is bright and people can see it. Let me go to the third one.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I'm hearing
Go
education.
ahead.
I'm hearing education. I am not hearing driver education. I'm not hearing motorized vehicle driver education. Is this because I'm hard of hearing, or is this not part of the conversation yet?
It is a limited part of our conversation because of, at least from my opinion, Neocles, drivers have to have a license. They have to supposedly know the rules of the road. And you're not supposed to drive without a license. Yes, it is important, I think, for us to do some outreach. But it's also has been easier for us to try to do outreach to the bicycling community. I don't know, some other folks think about. Tyson, you have a thought?
I've got a list of things that I've been having conversations with friends and family in town who ride bikes everywhere. And on my list of, what we're looking at now is updating the bike map. And what we had talked about previously in other meetings were maybe getting sponsors to, promote this bike map, to help pay for it, what have you. But on my list of things to research to do is to go to driving schools and see if, what their curriculum is, or like if we can push, hey, we've got these cool new bike maps. Could you please let drivers in the area, do that? But I think with driving schools, you get people from all around Bowling Green, not just Bowling Green, learning how to drive. And I don't know, it's definitely on, like I said, on my list of things to look at, of what type of safety is being taught to look out for bikers.
I can comment one thing on that. I did teach driver's education for 10 years, and being a bicycler, I always tried to emphasize to my drivers to watch out for the bicyclers, and they have right to the lane as you do, and so forth. And that was before they made the rule too. You have to move over 3 feet, I think, for a biker. But I always try to do my 2 cents worth in. But now it's all commercial schools, and I'm not sure how they emphasize. You hope they're doing their part with being a driver and watching out for bicyclers. So I don't know how it's like that. That's a good point, Andy. You wonder what commercial schools, what they're doing now as far as trying to teach young drivers to be ready for riders on the road.
I'm about to find out. So.
Okay, Kirby.
Oh, good.
I was about to, I didn't want to throw you under the bus, Kirby, but I was about to say, I'm guessing Kirby's about to find out. And I was going to say, and unfortunately I am too, because Reagan and Kirby are in the same class.
Yeah.
I was kind of doing the math. So in about 5 months, I'll be able to tell you all.
So Kirby, what I did is I shared your report as well. Is there anything you'd like to say about this before we move on?
I don't know. Obviously going out like on the country roads, I biked them, and I've never biked on those before. They were kind of scary. Drivers going really fast, really close, but yeah, in town they won't pass you, and it's also confusing.
Yeah. or they try to pass you when there's a car coming, when they should just wait for another minute or so.
Yeah, they'll just go 10 miles an hour right behind you.
Yeah. Well, but better that than them trying to squeeze. I mean, that's why we're urging people to ride out from the edge, because they at least get the perception. They know they can't pass you by staying in the lane. They know they have to go in the other lane to pass. I think most of them are intimidated by a double yellow line, even though the law says if we're riding less than half the speed limit, they are allowed to cross the double yellow line. That's another thing. It'd be interesting to find out what the driver's schools are telling people.
Yeah, I don't think people know that.
Yeah, I think they are so cautious about crossing the line that I don't think they realize. All right, what I'd like to do is jump down to, first of all, with C, now that everybody has a copy of your guys' messages, and the three of you do, can I ask for November to see if you can come up with kind of a consolidated list? Because I think there's some value in each of the different, and that's why we had 3 committee members. Could you see if you can consolidate and give the commission a single recommendation? That might also include the one thing we've talked about in the past, which is to differentiate routes. So for example, on Worcester might be a route, but it probably is for more experienced riders. Whereas, for example, in Kirby's neighborhood on Wallace would be for less experienced riders. If there's a way to distinguish that somehow, I would think that would be a contribution. All right.
I think
Tyson,
we can
go ahead,
do a good
Andy.
job consolidating, and also like to I think what's kind of been brought up tonight and what we've talked about before is categories of easy lanes, intermediate lanes, difficult lanes that, you know, like if you have been biking in this town, you know these neighborhoods, you think you're good out there, but maybe if you're just learning how to ride a bike, maybe it's not the same. That, yeah, I think we can consolidate a lot of stuff. There's a lot of information we can pack into one thing.
But I'll leave it up to you guys to whether you're going to just do an easy or an inexperienced experience route, or if you want to do 3, don't make it more than 3. That's just too complicated.
Sure.
But let's see what you guys can come up with now that you've got those things in front of you. Tyson, did we have any pedestrian or bike incidents this last month?
No, I don't believe so.
Good. That's always a good thing. All right. Old and continuing business. I knew I should have written this down. One thing comes to mind is we still need a representative from the university because we've only got 8 members, but there was some other continuing order of business that came to me. Well, I've been sitting here all afternoon waiting through all of the preparation for this, and I didn't write it down, and I knew I was going to forget, and I did. As soon as it comes to me, probably in the middle of the night, I will send that out, but it's under old and continuing business. Under new business, and I would like to wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so. I smell my dinner being cooked as well. And I'm sure other people may be hungry. Under new business, thanks to the Parks Foundation, we were able to submit a grant to the Bowling Green Community Foundation to request funding for a set of bicycle racks, especially oriented toward downtown. And thanks to Kristen, but also especially to Amanda, who has done a lot of literal footwork walking the downtown area with Joe and looking for areas where we can add some bike racks for town. The other interesting thing is, so the bike racks that will be ordered here, assuming we get funded, is that they'll have that green paint coating on them that fits into the kind of the green motif of the other bike racks downtown. We still have other bike racks that are in storage. They are plain metal. So we propose that they should be placed in at least 3 of the parks, Ridge Park, Winter Garden, and Carter Park. And also potentially 1 or 2 of them around the new Veterans Memorial Building at City Park. So all four of, we want to work with Parks and Rec to see where we can enhance bike parking. There are bike racks over at the pool, but there were none in the new building, and I'm presuming some of those that we have in storage that we purchased will be moving, will be able to be used for that.
Steve will look at that, but I can tell you for sure, Ridge does not need any more because we put some of
You already Ridge,
ones
okay.
in
I
there
may have
already.
misspoken.
So those are
Yeah.
brand new ones. And Winter Garden has enough bike racks and
It does, okay.
yeah.
So basically City Park at around someplace adjacent to the new building, and
That would be a
then
good idea. Yeah.
Carter Park, are they stored at Carter someplace? I can't remember what Amanda said. Where
No, they're not stored at Carter. They're stored in a storage barn at Winter Garden.
Okay. But there may be one at Carter Park, but there's probably room to put an additional one or two, depending on what we've got there. Let's see, under new business, the recommendations for our advocacy. The first one, Bill has already mentioned about that we voted and recommended to the city council to pursue a multi-use path from the high school to community center and also to Coogan's Corners. The second recommendation was that we also recommended that with each of the city street constructions, that appropriate bike infrastructure, pedestrian and handicapped access as part of the active transportation plan be considered. And I think we've kind of talked that to death tonight. Under the education component, we also have talked about educational articles that we can put in the print and electronic media. And I looked through my files, and I have a fairly substantial number of these that they're all oriented toward the riding public, but rules of the road, riding etiquette, and wearing helmets and things. And we still have quite a few of the bookmarks and other handouts that we can use. I'd like to, and then as Andy mentioned earlier, I think we've been talking about the bicycle friendly business plan along with a theme park, and Kristen and I haven't had time to get to the downtown BG and Chamber of Commerce and others because they'll be key to helping us do that. So I'd like to table C until the next meeting, and hopefully we can have some progress on that. Is there any other new or I guess new or old or continuing business that we should address, Kristen? Anything?
I
you
did
can think
not
of?
have any, no.
I know there's one other thing that I thought of that's just been floating around out there. And I am my brain is full and I can't remember. All right.
When you remember
and
in the middle of the night, Steve, please wait until
I won't, right, I'll wait till morning. Well,
okay.
I'll write
appreciate
it down so that because I'll know I remembered in the middle of the night and I won't remember in the morning. So yeah, I'll
Because
keep
you know,
a pad
I'm
and
always
pencil.
on call, so I'll check an email if it comes in at 3 o'clock.
There you go.
Don't.
So yeah, and I won't call anybody if I remember
Okay.
it. When I remember it, whatever it is. Lobby visitation very quickly. We're kind of over time. Is there any lobby
Steve?
visitation from any of our guests?
Steve, I promise
Sandy,
to make it quick.
Amanda?
It's Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy.
I promise to make it super quick.
Okay.
And it all kind of goes with stuff that you've been saying tonight. I have been ramping up my social media because that's about all I can do right now is social media. I can't do any other education. So if anybody has any graphics on bicycles and bicycle safety and good things like that, can you please send them to me? I try and hit bikes and pedestrians at least once a week. Pedestrians at least maybe twice a week, the way it's been going. I would really appreciate that. If anybody would like to do some small videos, if anybody watches my Facebook page, you've been seeing Did You Know videos that were very short, sweet, to the point. If anybody on this committee would love to do some of them, please get a hold of me, hint, hint, hint. So we can get some of them out and I can get some of them saved for next spring. Kristen, question for you. I've been downtown a lot lately and I've been seeing a lot of bicycles on the bikes, on the sidewalks downtown. Is it, I can't remember if is it signage that's on the poles or is it also on the sidewalks? And if it's on the sidewalks, does it need a boost for next spring?
It's both. That's a good
Okay.
question. I'm not sure that the city wants to continue painting it on the sidewalks.
Right, yeah, right now would be a horrible time,
Well,
but,
but I'm not sure they want to continue that anyway.
okay.
But right now there's signage and there's still some remnants of when it was painted on the sidewalk.
Right.
Amanda, do you have any thoughts on that?
Brian Kraft had mentioned that several weeks ago. I'm having trouble recalling his exact words, but I thought he was curious if there was some interest in putting those decals back on the sidewalk. But I would need to double check with him to confirm that that was exactly how the conversation went, because he too had noted increased bicycle traffic on the sidewalks in the downtown area and thought that perhaps the signs on the poles were being ignored or not even being noticed. They were kind of just blending with the environment. So, so that could maybe, Steve, would you mind putting that on next month's agenda?
I'll be glad to.
That'll help remind me and maybe all of us to, if you all maybe have a recommendation on that one way or the other, or some other suggestions, because I've seen some social media comments too regarding that very issue. So.
Well, and that also could be one of the educational pieces that we need to do, because Tyson reminds us all the time that riding on the sidewalk accounts for about 90% of all of the accidents, the bike accidents in one way or another, because people, and not in the downtown area, the danger in the downtown area obviously are pedestrians, and people shouldn't be on the sidewalks. I agree, unless people think it's aesthetically unpleasing, that the signs on the sidewalks make a lot more, give people more attention. The only problem is I have had people interpret that means absolutely no riding on sidewalks any place in BG rather than just the downtown area. But and that's not completely bad if, but people take it as like we're not encouraging biking if you do ride on the sidewalk, as I do on a couple of occasions, you just have to have eyes in the back of your head in every direction every time you cross a sidewalk or any place where a car could pull in or pull out, but because that's where people get in trouble. Okay, any other comments for visitation? Bill?
Yeah, 4 quick things. One, Sandy, a point of clarification. Part of what you said was that every week you try and hit bikes and pedestrians. I'm assuming you mean as a topic on your social media, right?
Right, yeah.
She knocks me off my bike every day at the rec center.
Well, if you quit pulling in front of me, it wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I try and do a due diligence, but it doesn't always work, especially like this week when it's alcohol safety week and teen driver week and bus week and something red ribbon. I can't do them all. But yeah, I need some fresh new graphics, and that's, but I don't want to open this can of worms tonight. I'm just making a statement that Safe Routes to Schools funding is coming up. That's all I'm saying on that one. And
Okay,
Steve, I
go ahead,
can't
Bill.
find
You
it.
got a couple more.
Yeah, real quick. Second, I want to, again, thank you all. Your input is very important in what we do on council. I can't say that enough. The third item is when it comes time for putting the theme park map together, please send a note my way. I would like to somehow contribute to the printing. And then the fourth item is I had this, I don't know, vision that it would be great when we come up with the bike routes, the recommended bike routes, that we have share rows everywhere to identify that. But I think what's become apparent over the last few weeks is that probably is not a workable way of doing it. So I have found absolutely no hesitancy for putting the signs that bikes may use full lane. So perhaps, and it's just something to consider, when you come up with the 3 or so different levels of bike paths, there might be some way of putting decals on those signs to kind of demark it. And I don't know if it'd be like a red dot or, that's to be determined, but perhaps as a way to identify the routes, and that can be part of the overall education effort, so that people would be able to say, oh, okay, I understand these 3 dots, and this is the route that I want. Just that plus the map might be a nice combination. So please, if you feel it worthwhile, please consider that. And again, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Andy and Kirby, can we get together sometime, maybe social distance or something? I mean, I'm out of town all next week, and if we all survive the election on the 3rd, after that, I've got time, so maybe we can get together somehow, Andy. I don't know. What do you think, Kirby? I know you got cross country still in school and everything, but
Yeah, my schedule's kind of crazy until Halloween if we do badly, or the 7th if we do well.
No, you're gonna do well. You're tied up. You're tied up.
yeah. Congratulations.
So-
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll email all 3 of us all of our proposals that Steve emailed all of us. I mean, it'll be maybe too much, but it'll link all of us together, and we should just keep in touch that way until schedules maybe clear up and we figure something out. So
Sure, that sounds good, Andy.
As Bob, as a former driver ed teacher, you should just go over and get Kirby and both wear masks and let them go.
Work out something there. So
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, we can stand adjourned.
I put something in the chat for you.
Yeah,
A
go
little-
ahead.
I put a little
Nancy.
suggestion in the chat for when you're at the point of recruiting new members.
okay.
okay.
All righty. And I also sent 2 emails earlier. I gave you homework for the next meeting about redoing our ranking of streets. For those people who are new to the council, I'll give you some help with that. The other people, this is a sort of a reliability check. So I sent you out an Excel spreadsheet and a whole bunch of other files to help you do this. And if you have questions, email me and I'm glad to do it. And I'll send you the code. Right now, the Excel spreadsheet says BSC1, BSC2, BSC3, and I've assigned you each to a number. And it's a secret code, so nobody will know who it is. The last one had your first names on it, but this will be a secret because we don't want that Transportation Safety Committee knowing who rated which street, but or the administration. But I'll send that to you in a separate email. All right, we'll see you. Thank you for the productive meeting and the great discussion, and we'll let you know what's happening next month. I have a brother who packed up his RV and a truck and a trailer and went out west because he's afraid of the apocalypse happening in November. So he's out hiding out someplace at a campground, I think. So let's hope there won't be an apocalypse. We'll find out what happens, I guess. All right, everybody stay well and stay healthy. Keep wearing your masks,
You're right.
you know, and social distance and whatever. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And good night. You
Everybody.
can leave, and I think Kristen will close out the meeting for us.
Yep.
Thanks
Thank
again
you,
for all your
Steve.
help, Amanda.
Okay.